In Zen, when we are talking about world, we usually don't say the world. We are speaking about a phenomenal encounter that happens each moment. World is something that is going on. It is something that happens, not a solid thing. In other words, you are not in a place. But when you say the word world, you immediately turn it into a place. You objectify it. You solidify a temporal event, something that is happening, into a solid extended thing, a place that you are in. And this is simply not what's really going on. Zen is basically a process of deprogramming, and this is the first step in your deprogramming. You have to stop thinking of your being as something that exists in a physically extended, solid world, and realize instead that you are involved in a massively large, momentary event. World is something that is happening, and you are somehow involved. It is not a physically extended location that you are in. But right now, it doesn't feel that way. The world definitely feels like a place that you are in. The only way to deprogram your belief that you exist in a solid world is to see that that solid world does not exist, and that it's simply not there. And the fastest way to do this is to start seeing the world in terms of dependent arising and emptiness, the two basic teachings of Buddhism. Dependent arising, in a nutshell, means this. The things you see around you have no real edges. They extend endlessly through both time and being. All the edges you impose on the things you encounter are artificial. These edges exist only in your head. Let me unpack this for you. Let's take a large-scale object, like the 2-ton muscle car in your driveway. It's a Chevy Impala that you are slowly restoring with the money from your roofing job. Our OS presents this car to us as a clearly defined solid object, separated from the world around it by empty space. But physically, what we are looking at is basically a macro event. It is a large-scale, very well-organized, very slow-moving hurricane. We are calling this macro event a 1972 Chevy Impala, but that is a name. It is a concept that exists in our heads. What is actually in front of us is a slowly moving macro event, and this macro event actually consists of millions and millions of smaller events. Frame, screws, motor, suspension, paint, bolts, springs, and so on. All of these smaller events are all coming together and coalescing as this moment of Impala. The Impala has no independent existence that can be isolated from these smaller events. It is a massive 2-ton gathering of smaller events. Each brief moment of what you are calling an Impala is arising dependently on all these events. It is all these events. What's more, the frame, the suspension, the motor, and so on are all arising from still smaller events of metals, rubbers, pistons, lubricants, and so on, all the way down to the atomic, then subatomic, then quantum level. And at none of these levels will you find anything that is not made up of or dependent upon some other set of processes and events. Here's the thing. None of these millions of smaller events is ever exactly the same from moment to moment. So this macro event, the Impala in the driveway, is not the same Impala from moment to moment. It is not a solid, persistent object at all. And this is just the start. Your OS tells you that this car stops at its edges. But this moment of Impala is not just dependently arising on all its constituent events. It is also arising dependently upon the vast network of worldly events that allow this exact moment of Impala. It is arising from your roofing job, which is letting you restore the car a bit more with every paycheck. So it also is arising dependently upon the developer who hired your uncle's roofing firm to roof his new housing project, and the city of San Pedro, California, that amended a subsection of zoning rules to allow the project to move forward, and on and on. Like the event that it is, this impala's edges are unclear in space. The edges of each moment of impala simply can't be found. Beyond extending endlessly outward into world, each moment of impala extends in time as well. This moment of impala depends entirely upon, and is thus arising dependently upon, your father and brother, who dragged you under your brother's Camaro when you were 12 to help them change the clutch. That lit the fire in you that eventually led to you buying this car from a weed dealer in Akron 7 years later. This exact moment of car in the driveway is arising dependently on all these things. If you took away just one of these things, even just one, you would not have the same exact moment of car. So, in reality, this impala has no edges in time. It extends endlessly through both world and time.